Welcome to Yaka Digital Network. Back in the 1960s, East African nations achieved something massive: political independence. They raised their own flags, elected their own leaders, and took formal control of their governments. But if you look around a modern city like Kampala today, you might notice a disconnect. While the nation governs itself, many local business owners face a daily, grueling struggle just to survive, let alone expand their operations. It brings up a really important question. If a country is fully independent, why are its biggest commercial banks often owned by foreign companies? And when valuable natural resources are discovered in the ground, why does that wealth seem to flow right out of the country instead of enriching local communities? This hidden pressure is called neo-colonialism. It's what happens when a country is technically free, but its decisions are still guided by outsiders through money, trade, and even the brands we see every day. Instead of ruling with a military, control is maintained quietly through the economy. Think about the phone in your pocket, or the brand of tea you drink. How many of those are actually owned by a local company? Having a flag and a parliament is a great start, but true independence requires a nation to control its own economy. When a country only has political sovereignty on paper, it remains vulnerable to invisible rules set by outside forces. To understand these invisible rules, we have to look at how global trade is structured. Economists often describe a center-periphery model. In this setup, East African nations are pushed to the outer edges, the periphery, acting mainly as producers of raw, unrefined materials. Take a look at this everyday example. Here, coffee cherries are being harvested. It takes immense labor, time, and care from local farmers to grow and pick these crops for the rest of the world to consume. But the people doing the hard work in the fields do not get to decide what that coffee is worth. The prices for these raw materials are set by international trading markets thousands of miles away, in cities like London or Shanghai. The local farmer has absolutely no say in their own profit margin. This chart shows exactly how this traps a developing economy. Notice on the left side, raw goods like coffee or minerals are exported at a very low price. Then on the right side, those exact same materials are processed abroad and sold back to the country as highly expensive finished products. Because the country is constantly spending more on expensive imports than it earns from cheap exports, it runs a constant deficit. The local economy simply cannot save up enough money to build its own factories or develop an industrial base. Without that manufacturing capacity, a nation cannot create steady, high-paying jobs for its youth. It gets stuck in a cycle of poverty, even when it is sitting on incredibly valuable natural resources. This cycle of poverty leads us to the next mechanism of control: finance. When a country cannot generate enough capital through trade, it turns to foreign loans to build its roads, hospitals, and schools. But relying on borrowed money usually means giving up the power to make your own rules. That loan money frequently comes from large international organizations, like the International Monetary Fund. These loans often come with enforced rules. To get the funds, governments are sometimes required to sell off their own public assets, like water networks and power grids, to private external investors. In Uganda during the 1980s and 90s, these financial rules led to the closure or restructuring of several locally owned banks. As the national regulators adapted to meet global standards, foreign-owned commercial banks moved in and took dominance over the financial sector. This diagram illustrates why that matters for everyday people. On the left, a massive multinational corporation easily secures funding because they meet strict global collateral standards. On the right, a local Ugandan small business hits a red wall. Because they lack global assets, they are denied the credit they desperately need to expand. When local entrepreneurs cannot secure loans to start their own businesses, they are left with only one option: working for the foreign companies that can. The citizens remain laborers, rather than becoming owners of their own economy. We see a similar dynamic in the energy and mining sectors, a practice sometimes called corporate colonialism. When valuable resources like oil are discovered, the contracts drawn up to extract those resources often heavily favor outside investors. Frequently, foreign firms negotiate tax holidays. This allows them to pump oil or mine minerals without paying taxes to the national government for a set number of years. As a result, the everyday domestic business owners are left to carry the entire tax burden needed to fund public services. This map-based flowchart shows what happens to the money once those resources are sold. You can see the wealth generated from the land skipping right past the local economy box. Instead, those profits are sent directly back to the foreign corporate headquarters, a wealth drain known as profit repatriation. And the imbalance goes beyond money. These corporations bring in their own heavy machinery, technical manuals in foreign languages, and their own expert staff. They wall off their knowledge, which keeps local workers assigned to casual, low-skilled labor, rather than learning the vital engineering skills themselves. The result is an extractive system that strips away the nation's natural wealth, while permanently denying the country the tools and capital it needs for its own long-term development. This influence goes deeper than bank accounts and contracts. It takes root in how people think. Over time, a dependency syndrome can develop. This is when citizens start to view imported goods, foreign education, and outside ideas as naturally superior to their own local innovations. This map illustrates the physical result of that mindset, a phenomenon known as the brain drain. Because the local economy isn't creating industrial jobs, highly trained professionals, like doctors and engineers, migrate out of East Africa to work in the global north. The massive investment the country made in educating its youth ends up benefiting wealthier nations. Now, it is important to balance this perspective. In a highly connected global economy, completely shutting out foreign investment is not practical. These international partnerships act as a necessary bridge. They bring in large-scale infrastructure and create immediate jobs that a developing nation simply cannot fund on its own right away. The true challenge for East African nations is learning how to leverage these global connections. It is about sitting at the table to negotiate better contracts, insisting on local skills training, and building strong regional trade blocs to protect their economic sovereignty. Understanding the invisible rules of neo-colonialism is the first essential step toward building lasting local capacity. Thank you for watching with Yaka Digital Network. Please review the lesson materials below, and we will see you in the next session.